Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined by my co-host Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, dog faced pony soldiers. I'll tell you what, I think we're going to probably have to start revising that list because they definitely have some new sobriquets for us over there.
Yeah, you tell me what you want to add, and we'll throw a few more in there.
And they're like, see what they center on, what they
Right.
what emerges as their top candidate.
All right. Well, it's been a while since we've been together. I'm back. Spent some time with my grandchildren. We just discussed here before we went live, and got a chance to celebrate the birth of granddaughter or grandchild number 6, granddaughter number 4. So all is well in Evansville, Indiana area. It is hot and humid, and my wife, I think, has crossed that off the list of potential retirement sites.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know where you go though. You try to slice and dice that thing where summer's acceptable, but winter's acceptable too. And it looks like you're gonna have to give up one home, one or the other.
It just gets smaller. I mean, they're
Real small little sandwich.
and look, everybody's different. People have different interests, different things that they want to do. So, I mean, the West is wonderful for a lot of things, especially if you want to do outdoors, you want to go skiing in Utah or Colorado or something like that. But they are having, the West has got a terrible drought issue.
Right. The thing about the West is like that. That's not supposed to work. Millions and millions of people living in the desert.
Yeah.
I mean, no one ever made a plan for that, right?
Right.
So with all the modern amenities and power and water and all the stuff you need, they're making do. They're making it work, but you're on a sort of a shaky foundation when you're out west.
Yeah, I mean, the desert is a desert. It wasn't meant to have hundreds and thousands of miles of asphalt and concrete buildings and all of these things, that are kind of like heat sinks. So it's, we know Spencer, he lives there. He's dying to get out of there. The heat, he's he's one of the, he definitely can't stand the heat, so he wants to get out of that kitchen.
Right, and that's it. Yeah, where he's in the Valley of the Sun, right? He's in the Phoenix. That is very, very hot, and it's hot all night. You never get away from it. So, I see where they are on that. I read something a couple years ago, and I thought at the time, pshaw, but the more I think about it, it's like, okay, August. I love August because as a basketball coach, that's as close as we ever get to free time, right? And so I have a little time to golf and hang out in the warm weather and everything. But he said August, and I think the other one was either March or February. They said those are unnecessary months. Like we've had enough summer. We're ready. I mean, you look at the newspaper now; it's full of football news, right? It's full of news about games that won't take place till next month, right? Because people are following baseball, but baseball is kind of grinding along right now in the regular season. So just from a sports perspective, right? But I mean, everybody's gone out and done what they wanted to do this summer, and a lot of the kids are even starting to be back in school. So we just have this sort of summer month that we have to endure that we don't really treat as a summer month. So, the more I think about that article, the more I think there is something to it.
Yeah, matter of fact, he said school. I mean, that's my wife's saving grace right now until she gets a chance to return, which is that today's the first day of school down there in Indiana. So the 3 oldest ones are going to be tied up a little bit for half the day, and I think next week the 4-year-old starts 2 or 3 hour preschool. So that'll help a lot because when you're dealing with 5 children from the age of 2 to 10, and you're trying to keep them entertained. Now, luckily, just like I mean, raising kids, when they get a little older, they have a few friends, and so they can do a few things. But the younger ones, you've got to keep them occupied. And I think we went. What day was it? We last week when I was still there, we went to an amusement park. And I'm going to have to ask you this question. You've been to a few amusement parks, I assume, in your life, right?
Yep.
In general, I'm trying to remember after I went through that amusement park, which was the second time I'd been to that park in Indiana. Which is actually in Santa Claus, Indiana. It used to be called Santa Claus World. Now it's called Holiday World. That is like the hilliest amusement park I can remember ever seeing. I mean, you walk in, you get through the main gate, and if you, to get to the areas, you got to start going down a hill, right? Which means eventually you got to go up a hill, and so there's kind of a series of these things where they built this thing so that it's kind of downhill, flattens out a little bit. But I was, towards the end of that day, my wife had said before we went there, the couple days before, she goes, "We're going to go from 10 to 2." Okay. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know how it takes 45 minutes or so to get there. I'm not sure my grandchildren are going to be with only having 3, maybe 4 hours at the park, max. And of course, we got there at 10:30. We didn't get home until 5:30. We had all of the grandchildren plus 2 of their friends, which was to help occupy the older ones so they could do things and not always be around us all the time. But I'm telling you, pushing a double stroller with the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old up those hills, especially towards the end of the day, I'm like, when it's 90 degrees and as humid as it is back here, it was no fun at all. Plus the fact, I will say, plus the fact that my poor, my oldest granddaughter, who is 8, we're still not really quite sure what happened because she was with with her friend, and we had just completed this little ride called a turkey call or whatever, where we shoot little laser guns at targets, which was nice because it was like an indoor ride. I'm like, this is good.
more. You want to do this one again?
Boys, and she's got her friend and her younger sister in there, or her younger brother in there, and somehow. And I guess they were ahead of us. So they got out, or they're behind us. They got out, and somehow she wasn't paying attention or something like that. And she tripped enough that she bumped her head, and she had a huge knot on her head, and she skinned her knee. So she was bleeding a little bit. We had to go find the first aid station, and all this stuff. And I'm like, great. Well, at least it happened at the end of the day. And I'm thinking like, I'm thinking my daughter is probably not going to be really happy that we bring her daughter back bruised and bandaged, but it wasn't our fault.
Hey, we brought her back.
Yeah, we brought her back. When you're trying to keep track of all those kids, the biggest fear is that you're going to lose them somewhere, because none of my grandchildren have cell phones, so they've got to be able to stay within a certain distance so you know where the heck they are. But I mean, it was brutal, and I'm thinking like, man, I didn't think I was that old, but if you're out there in an amusement park and you got all those kids in that kind of weather, if it's flat, I can probably survive a lot better. It's just going up and continue these uphill pushes and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this was just, what a day.
There's usually they find a pretty flat piece of land to do those things with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up like Astro World, Six Flags. Those are flat. Yeah. I mean, it's Texas, but it's flat.
Yeah, I kept wondering about this. I just sat there like, why are there so many stinking hills in this park? I'm sorry. It's like, this is not conducive to
not a good feature. Give us other features.
That's right. All right. Anyway, so we got school. I'm there. I'm glad that's going. We're going to see more kids, I guess, locally start school. Right. I don't know when your kids get back.
22nd. So they have a little bit.
They're going back before Labor Day, I think. So it's
some
good.
schools like Fauquier, Stafford, there's some systems in Virginia starting today.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I assume the parents are probably okay with that for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't know.
I think my personal opinion is that summer is really important.
Yeah.
Right. You're with your grandparents don't come visit in October, right? They come visit in August, like when you were there, right? You don't meet the other cousins during that time of year. You don't, all these things. You kind of just live your life in the winter, and in the summer you can go mix and explore. And I think that nature is as good a classroom as a classroom. And I think that away time is a very important part of learning. But that's just me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm kind of okay. If school starts in late August, that's okay. It's a little, when I hear kids are, my grandkids are starting, it's August 10th.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side of that is that they get out earlier. So they've got, they have, it's we've seen more of this kind of almost year round thing where they have these periods of time, no longer the traditional September to June thing. Now you've got these other things, and they build in other break times in there. So maybe you could go and do something in the fall, late fall or whatever. But, that takes a while. I'm not used to that schedule. I'm so,
Right. And it's like, we went to Memorial Day. We went to a big family reunion down in Louisiana, and we were the only ones who had to go back to school. Every other kid there was out for the summer from whatever state they were from. We were the only ones who had, and we had like 2 weeks left. My kids are like, what are we doing? And I don't think they're necessarily wrong about that. I mean, I think you got to give on one end, either give us Memorial Day or give us Labor Day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as you well know as a parent, I mean, the thing is that the school systems mandate a certain number of teaching days for the year, and that's, you've got to hold to that calendar. The only problem is that last 2 weeks of the year, and particularly when you hit June, nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening, right? And what happens is, so they give them here they have the SOL, Standards of Learning Test, right? After they give them the Standard Learning Test, they've shot their wad. They don't have anything left to teach, right? Because they crammed it all in for that. So then they're literally sitting there showing movies in school, and it's like, to make 190 days. Maybe 190 days is not the answer. Maybe it used to be 180. Maybe that's the answer, right? Because then when that's over, maybe you have a day or two to wrap things up, but then let them out, right? You're done with them. You're not going to teach them anything else. You can't really teach them anything else. And there's all this, they won't retain over the summer and so forth. The stuff you're trying to teach from Memorial Day on, that's the stuff they're not going to retain, right? The other stuff they've sort of dealt with and intellectualized and so forth. It's the stuff at the end, you're just kicking the wall.
Yeah, I kind of wonder. I mean, if the school systems tried to shorten a year, and then would all,
right? What would the politics of that be?
Right.
People are, oh, you don't want to learn. It's like, well, go to school those 10 days. Go watch those 10 days unfold and come back and tell me that that's important to the future of the republic.
Yeah, I mean, 10 days, 12 years of schooling or whatever, right? That's 4 months.
Yeah, it is. But it's, it's 4 months scattered in areas when no one's paying attention.
Yeah.
4 months you could do something more productive with.
Right. I mean, it's like, you're never going to get that time back.
Right.
So it's just kind of crazy. All right. We got plenty of news too, as well.
We sure do.
Quickly, just, we're up to day 168 or so of the invasion in Ukraine. There's been a lot of discussion about about these strikes that are going on near the nuclear plant and stuff like that. Kind of rattles Europe, and plus we still have the natural gas issue into Europe as a result of this. It's still kind of a mess, but boy, the Ukrainians are still holding on here. I mean, they're still fighting tooth and nail on this.
So they attacked an airfield in Crimea that the Russians were using, and destroyed a bunch of their planes and other stuff. And, put a pretty crippling blow on them, what was in that field, right? They haven't stopped Russia, obviously, but, they dealt them a pretty serious blow. They also dealt them a psychological blow there because the Russians assumed that their people and equipment were safe in Crimea, and now they know better. So it'll be interesting to see what that does to change, like, how they handle, their business over there and so forth.
Yeah, go ahead.
The G7 is saying, hey, Russians, let these guys control the nuclear plant because, you don't need that to do what you're doing, and it's better off if it just safely operates and no one gets killed. It'll be interesting to see over the next day or two what the Russians do about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say, just with Crimea, it's kind of like, I wasn't really expecting the Ukrainians to go and do what they did there, but it's a kind of a blow. It's like, I think Putin, these guys think like, okay, we've annexed Crimea years ago, so that's kind of safe. We're just kind of continue to try to eat away at Ukraine, and then they go and they strike that, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, wait a minute, these guys are actually still fairly aggressive. Maybe we're not as safe as we thought we were. This is a slog and a dogfight, and more power to the Ukrainians for continuing to fight this. But I mean, there's a human cost to all of this, just
Yeah.
all, which is
And there's
unfortunate.
also, they're having to draft people now in Russia, and that you get about 4 days of training, and they put you in the front. So, that's pretty harsh, and you don't really get good soldiering out of that, and you don't really get good discipline out of that. So, that makes it harder for them to do what otherwise might be fairly routine.
All right. I didn't have this down there because I kind of forgot about it initially, but also want to just kind of switch, get your feelings about Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. And kind of China had some issues with that, and I don't know if she handled it well. I mean, I was away for most of that.
So she goes to Taiwan, and I'm fine with going to Taiwan, and I'm fine with standing up and saying Taiwan is its own country. Yeah, that's right. Bob's right. More trouble we can cause Russia. That's why, like, conservatives, every penny we send, you hit Twitter's like 40 billion more for Ukraine and not for the border or whatever. Okay, like I get that, but the problem is, we're costing. If you want to spend a dollar to cost Russia a bunch of dollars, there's not really a more effective way to do it than pumping money into Ukraine, and Ukraine's fighting a proxy war for us, like a lot of other people have in the past, essentially at this point. But we're costing them a lot of money, men, material, and whether whoever prevails or whatever, we're weakening the Russians, and we're sticking a big bill on them. So I think Bob is right about that. Back to talking about Pelosi. Chinese don't get to tell us where to go. They don't get to tell our leaders where to go. They don't get to tell us what they say. Okay. And so when people were criticizing her, I'm like, she's been fairly consistent on Taiwan, but then she comes back. And I guess yesterday she was on with Casey Hunt, one of those people, network news, talking heads. And she's like, well, China's one of the freest countries on earth. And, we're not trying to make that. We still believe in the one China policy, and nothing changed here. And we were just paying a little visit. And then it turns out her son is, went with her, and and his name was blacked out from all the travel documents. And he's making deals over semiconductors or whatever over there. So there was an angle to it. I mean, it was business trip, not necessarily for her, perhaps more for him, and I thought she was doing a good thing, but that her press conference, her interview there kind of undermined it.
Yeah, that was just, I saw a clip of that, and you're like, after you just came back from Taiwan, you go and you say that.
So it makes me wonder. It's like, what was she thinking there? Because once you get back, that's not the time to kowtow, right? It's when you're over there, hey, we're just here visiting. Hey, don't bomb the place, right? But once you get out, it's like, we went and talked to them. But she got out and then comes back and says, oh, we didn't really mean anything. We're just visiting. So I don't know. I don't know who got to. I think it would be interesting to who got to her, who said, hey, Nancy, you got to clean this up.
Yeah, really. It's like she's in the U.S. We already know, how the U.S., what our relations are supposed to be like. And she's trying to appease the Chinese when she comes back home.
Right. Just openly. And then there were some people saying, well, I think she misspoke. Well, I don't think, I went and watched it again to see if that was possible. And I don't think she misspoke. I think she meant what she said. Yeah, it's Sully. But I'm a freedom fighter. So, I'm for doing that. And, a good honor if she has the courage to go stand up to him. But now I don't know if she does or what the heck she was doing there. So
right. No, and I agree. I think in general, this was a good, this looked like it was going to be a good move on the part of the administration remember, stand up to Taiwan. Do not let China bully you. They've got human rights violations.
It wasn't them. They came out and said, hey, she shouldn't go. And this is, it's like, you're just one kowtow to China after another, Joe. It's almost like they've given you 10% or something, right? I don't know.
Yeah, you got to want these politicians. This whole thing with her son and all this stuff. Like, yeah, okay, we were okay, and then now this looks a little slimy.
Yeah,
just But then again, it's the Democrats. Whatever. All right. Get your quick take on the primaries on Tuesday, and just actually we can talk about just the recent ones because we've missed a few things, since I've been out. But
There's some
last
broad trend lines.
yeah. One of the things that I mean, Ilhan Omar, she squeaked by.
Almost got dumped. That's right.
Yeah.
A guy coming in saying, opponent coming in saying, she doesn't really care about you. She's making a name for herself, all these old ethical scandals, and, almost pulled it off, So I think that district is D plus 24 or whatever. So, she'll prevail again, but wow, that's a wake up call. I think Tlaib was a little closer than people thought it would be too. So, the squad may not be as popular as it thought it was 6 months ago.
And Trump's candidates.
Trump's candidates were they 21-0 yesterday? They're now 118 and 11 this cycle.
Yeah, the gubernatorial race, the primary in Michigan, not Michigan, but Wisconsin. That was the former lieutenant governor. They thought she would coast in until Trump gave the endorsement to this other guy, and then he beat her 47-42 or something like that.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, so he did pretty good. I'm a little concerned about Kerry Lake in Arizona and stuff like that. But Arizona's, I don't know. Like I said, Spencer lives there, and he just kind of throws up his hands about Arizona and Republicans, not really sure what the heck they're doing there. But once again,
Arizona is one of the places where the anti-Trump Republican contingent was strongest, and they had some solid elected officials who were not on Trump's side. And, for her to come through and win like that, and, everyone knowing that that's what they were voting on was essentially a Trump versus non-Trump election, right? The names on the ballot were almost inconsequential. For that to go that decisively toward Trump was, kind of tells you like where the people are on this. And I think she'll win in the fall.
For Lake?
Yeah.
What about Wisconsin though? That facing Tony Evers, that'd be a tough race, I think.
That could be a tough race, and it would have been tough either way. But Trump the Trump brand has momentum right now, a lot of momentum. It got some more yesterday.
Yeah,
right? Big momentum flush yesterday.
Yeah, so and we'll roll into that because we've got. And we've got plenty to talk about. So we had, we'll talk about two things at once, I guess. One is that we had the big FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago and Trump's home, and then Trump's up in New York because he's supposed to give a deposition for which I just saw a newsflash saying that he's going to plead the fifth, take the fifth on that up there in New York. But we don't really know a lot about this raid. There's we're not getting really anything out of the Justice Department, and a lot of people, not just the hardcore Trump supporters, but a lot of other people are like, what is going on here? This is unprecedented.
Like Andrew Cuomo coming out tweeting saying, hey, what's going on? We need some explanation here. This is third world junta. The Codillo is worried about the popular former leader having the support to regain power, and so he wants to have what do you call them, show trials and get rid of the former leader so they have an excuse for him not to run again, right? That's what's going on here. Is they're trying to make it where Trump is somehow statutorily unable to run because they know, and if they didn't know before, they definitely know now. If he does run, he will beat Joe Biden. Right. And the Democrats kind of can't get out of it being Joe Biden, and the Republicans probably now kind of can't get out of it being Donald Trump. So we're probably, one thing yesterday probably did was line us up for a rematch of 2020.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all develops. And I think,
if I'm Trump, you know what I do? I get on the campaign trail and I do what Ronald Reagan did. I'm like, hey, one question. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? You like me, hate me, whatever. Are you better off, right? Is $5 gas better than $2 gas? I don't know. You decide, right? Because I think the statistics are never going to favor Biden anymore on that.
Yeah, no, they're still struggling with a lot of things, and as a result of that, that one question can really clarify a lot of things to a lot of people, because the way the economy in terms of the hard, the deep down pocketbook issues are going, they don't favor the Democrats at all, and so it makes for a very tough November, and it doesn't look good for the future for Biden Harris, at this stage. Yeah, I can see the Democrats say, we want to disqualify Trump, with this maneuver, try to get this so he can't run. On the other hand, it also seems to be part of their continual game plan to keep making Donald Trump front and center with as much negative type news as they can, to keep, because if they can play the Trump card in that sense of he's a bad, he has no integrity, he's not honest, blah blah, he's full of scandals, whatever. Just keep feeding that in. That's really about all they can try to play on. I mean, they used it with great effect in 2020, but it's 2022.
Right.
How
and the other guy has some scandals himself that will come to light at some point, right? Because there's too much. Another thing that happened yesterday as a result of the FBI doing this. If the FBI is going to look like a credible law enforcement agency for the duration of this term, it's going to have to do something about Hunter Biden, right? They have too much evidence that cannot be contradicted, that cannot be talked away or wished away, right? They have to do something about that, right? And so now they're like, oh well, the attorney general, the U.S. attorney in Delaware doesn't have the resources. Okay, then special counsel or get other resources, right? But this guy needs, people need to understand that this is a normal this is a normal criminal case, and it needs, if nobody's above the law, then, why aren't we hearing any more about that? What is up with Hunter Biden? Because the evidence there, it seems, could have been gathered and processed much sooner than it has. You can always tell. Our justice against righties happens quickly. Justice against lefties happens slowly, if ever, right? And that's what's going on now, is they're trying to drag this out and not have any bad news come out, at least until after the midterms, about Hunter Biden. And then they'll probably take whatever hit they get.
Yeah, no, I mean, didn't I see something from Brian Stelter had even talked about the Hunter Biden story of it's not a Republican type of thing or whatever. I mean, you're taking a lefty journalist there from CNN, and he's coming out and saying it's not. This is not.
Yeah,
this is not
you're gonna have to look at this. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, when people like that start to come out and say that, it's like, how long do you ignore it? And you're right on. You can't. If you want to be a legitimate FBI, this enforcement agency, then you can't just pick this thing and say, okay, we're going after Trump, and then but we're ignoring the Hunter Biden story. Plus, we're not less than 90 days away from the November election. Doesn't that throw something in there too for people in terms of the timing is curious as to why they're doing this now? Does this look political or what? I mean, they'll say no, but boy, it sure smells. Here's another comment from Bob.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, so that, you have federal law enforcement and federal bureaucracy being grown massively to harass political enemies, right? It's a lot of, there's a lot less faith in government. So, that's one thing about this. It's like, maybe this raid was completely legitimate. Maybe, there's evidence there of some high crime, but beyond just Presidential Records Act. You haven't given us back every piece of paper. There's really something there. There's really something on one of those documents that hangs Trump politically forever, right? But you need to produce that pretty quickly now, because otherwise this looks like, thugs using their power to harass the other party, right? I don't really see, and it's a fishing expedition. They broke open the safe. There's nothing in it, right? They spent 9 hours in the house. They didn't know what they were looking for, right? They're looking for anything, and what they're looking for, so people are clear about this. They don't care about the Presidential Records Act. The boxes they took out of Trump's house that had records in them were records the National Archives had mailed to Trump, right? Presidents get to decide. They have a lot of latitude in what they can and cannot take with them at the end of a term, right? And what they can, they can declassify every single document that ever attained to them, right? And not have any classified documents. Okay. So, whatever they did, the documents they took away from Trump's were documents they had sent, the National Archives had sent to Trump. Okay. So that's not what they're after. Okay. What they're after is something that says Trump knows he lost the election and he is just carrying on this fraud to get back into power. Okay, that's the smoking gun they're looking for. I don't think they have it. I don't think they're ever going to have it, because I think one thing that whatever you think of Trump, you have to agree with it. He's pretty sincere about thinking he got joked in this election, right? I don't think you can make a case that, he cynically knows he's lost and just put all these people through this for nothing, right? I think he thinks he won. And, you can agree or not that he indeed was cheated. Right. But I don't think it's arguable that he thinks he was cheated. And that's what they're trying to do, is prove that he knows he wasn't cheated and he did all this anyway.
I do think that Trump has convinced himself, or others have helped convince him, that he did not, he was cheating and did not lose. But that's once again that's up for debate in terms of I've got plenty of friends who think he was, and I got plenty of friends who think he wasn't, and as I've said before, not a fan of the guy in a general sense, in some things he did as president, but the policies and things like that. If you go back to that question that you had said, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? There's no argument that we were on a much better path under Trump. Even with the bumps in the road, we were still on a better path.
You had wages growing 2.5 times the rate of inflation. Inflation was almost non-existent. You had lowest unemployment ever for blacks, Hispanics, youth, women, at lowest in 50 years. Everybody was working and making more money than ever before. He added $5,500 a year to average family income in 3 years. And, Obama added 908 years. Bush added 440 in 8 years. So, he drove the stock market to record levels. He managed the economy. We had energy independence. We had $2 gas. We had groceries costing the same every time you went to the store. It was nice. It was working pretty well.
Yeah, you weren't worried about a lot of those things that we're worried about today.
And the troublemakers of the world were in a box, right? You didn't have Putin didn't make any trouble against Trump, right? He didn't make Iran didn't want to do any of this stuff against Trump. Right. It's only when we got to this that they started,
Right. Yeah. No, under Trump, these except for what North Korea was doing, trying to test him a little bit, no one else really wanted to test Trump. I think Trump showed that he was kind of no nonsense and he wasn't going to stand for a lot of this garbage out there. And we changed the president, and all of a sudden we've got all these crises internationally that
all the bad actors said, this guy's weak. We can roll him, and that's what's happened.
Yeah, the other thing I keep thinking about I noticed that there seems to be a running theme with Biden at events with handshakes. Mm-hmm. I saw a couple more clips. I guess Schumer, after they were talking, I guess, about this whole Inflation Reduction Act, or something, and he's shaking hands, and Biden had already shaken his hand, and then Biden is still holding out his hand and looking like, hey, what about me? But it's like, you already shook, he had that happen. And then there was some congresswoman or somebody. He held on to her. He started, and he wouldn't let go. And it's like, what is with this guy? And it's like, this is our president, but this is embarrassing.
Well, here's the other thing is, it appears that there's some notable mental decline in him now, right? That he is, even more than when he was elected. He's demented to some degree. I guess you saw the one he was trying to put his coat on, his sport jacket, when he got off the presidential helicopter, and the wife couldn't even figure out how to help him. She came up on the wrong side. I'm like, oh my God, who's in charge here? But here's the other thing. Okay, they claim that the White House did not know about this raid. Okay, so either, there are two possibilities there. they're telling the truth, and I mean they're lying, which is probably the case. I can't imagine the FBI tossing Trump's house without somebody checking with the White House first. So why would you lie? Why do you want distance from this when you're not going to get distance from it? And secondly, if he's not in charge, I mean, if he didn't authorize it, who's running the country, right? Who's approving these things, right? Just because Garland says he didn't really know either. Well, there's no way that the Attorney General and the president did not know that they were going to toss the house of the former president. Hey, this is third world country stuff. This is, to go depose the prior ruler. I mean, it's, this is not the USA. This is not what we did.
Yeah, no, I mean, I keep thinking about the safe cracking thing. It's like, are you kidding me? This is unbelievable. And I don't know if you're friends with Seton Motley, and maybe others have done it. Yeah, but I saw on Facebook the other day, he said this is the flag that he's flying over his house, which was a bunch of bananas.
Yeah,
banana flag. Exactly.
That's right. It's Banana Republic.
Thank you, Joe Biden, for turning the USA into the Banana Republic. Unbelievable.
In 18 months. I mean, quick slap, So,
right.
and the other one is, just before we leave this topic. So, when the Democrats were arguing that, about the energy prices, right? When it was, why was Trump so low? Oh, it's because no one was driving. Well, it turns out that by June of 2020, traffic was back to like 95% of normal. Okay. So that's not really why it stayed, gas prices stayed low. But when the gas got to $6 a gallon and people did stop driving, that's a big part of what led to it coming down. So it was okay to use that excuse against Trump, but it is completely rejected, against Biden. I mean, it's just, one double standard after the other.
All right. So Bob had kind of I'm just going to read this because it came out from two parts. Wonder when Mumbles will stop him from wearing blazers. Perhaps pull away sleeves are in order. I like that. Yeah, just time out.
Yeah, I hear you. Just get a new one every time.
Yeah. That's good. Okay, so you're talking. Let's talk about the kind of the thing that we've got here. We've got the Inflation Reduction Act. The Senate they managed to pass it 51-50. It's going back to the House, and then once they kind of sort that out, then I guess it goes to Biden for signature. $759 billion roughly. 350, 60 or so billion towards climate change. Lots of people going kind of crazy about, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to do more than we've ever done before for the environment. You mentioned about the IRS. They're going to expand these, add all these auditors and stuff like that.
85,000 IRS agents.
Yeah.
And we have about 700 billionaires in the country. Okay, so those 85,000 IRS agents, they're not for the billionaires. They're for you.
Yeah.
They're for me. They're for people on the right side politically.
Yeah, and so we've got all this stuff. I mean, Manchin and Sinema finally kind of caved on this, though this is a lot slimmer than the Build Back Better bill. The idea that it's called Inflation Reduction Act is a slap in the face and is really stupid to begin with.
Right, because it's not. I mean, even Bernie says, at best, you get nothing out of it.
Right.
And at worst, you're printing more money, right? You can't not be inflationary. So, I mean, I think break even is the best you can hope for on it. Also, a couple of things. One is, it undoes Massachusetts versus, West Virginia versus EPA, right? They say, okay, you can regulate carbon. It's now in the statute, right? You haven't determined that it's a pollutant, but you can regulate it as a pollutant, which allows them to do all the terrible environmental law things they want to do. Other thing is, so why did Biden fold, right? If that doesn't get talked about, like, why did he change his mind? Okay, it appears to be, so a couple of things happened to Biden. And this may not be correct, but I think it does fit all the things that have happened. So he's in a hearing one day with the appropriations hearing for the Secretary of the Interior, for the Interior Department. And he finds out during this hearing both that the they have no plan for offshore drilling beyond June 30th. They plan to begin work on the new plan on June 30th, right? So there's if you're drilling now, I guess you can keep drilling, but nobody can start anything new, right? Because there's no plan right now. No, they're not even accepting applications. So the other thing is the pipelines, right? He found out during this hearing that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the regulatory arm that controls pipelines, has said that they were going to require an impact statement of greenhouse gas emissions of every section of pipeline. So virtually, every mile or so, you would have to have a separate environmental impact statement for that pipeline. So the pipeline companies were saying, we're out of business. We're not doing this. We will just quit doing pipelines. So, that's so there's a pipeline from West Virginia that goes through Pennsylvania to into New England that supplies a lot of the natural gas to that part of the country. And so that pipeline was going to shut down. So I think what they have promised Biden is that after this clears, then they will go back and they will speed up permitting and they'll straighten out the pipeline problem. There remains to be seen if that happens because, the Senate may indeed have every intent of keeping that bargain. But, AOC is not voting for more pipelines. She didn't live in New England. Doesn't mean anything to her. So, you're going to have a substantial number of House Democrats that aren't going to support this. So he gave his part of this deal, but he is not going to get back the part that's supposed to come to him on it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in there that'll be interesting as they come forward. There was a lot made about, the EV subsidy, the tax credit, the $7,500 thing. The thing is that when you read about this, is because of some of the things they put in there. You have to have 40% of the battery has to be made in the U.S. Otherwise, the credit decreases and stuff like that. There are almost no cars. There are very few cars that actually will qualify for this. I mean, they've gone back and they've taken the old tax credit and they that had expired after the manufacturer sold 200,000 cars and set it back to zero. But with this other restriction in there and everything else, and also tying it to income, it actually very few people are going to be able to qualify for this at all in full because of all these things. And that battery thing, I mean, this is all that made in America stuff. It's going to go to like 80% and 100%. So they're touting it on the one hand on that top line, but they're really not telling the public, by the way, you actually may not get very much of that credit, if at all. And we just saw, Ford just increased the cost of their EVs by like 20%, because the material costs are going up. What's an affordable EV for everybody? I mean, Biden administration, they've been pushing this. We've been talking about this, but the cost of materials, thanks to Biden inflation, is so out of hand that the cost of the EVs is getting further and further away from the average American as if they could afford to begin with.
That's right. So you were already at $55,000. Now you're going to be around 70. So you're talking about, what percentage of the population drives a $70,000 car, right? Less than 10, right? I would say.
Yeah.
Just spitballing it. Another thing that's in that bill that people don't understand, and this is one of the things the Democrats are proudest of and they've fought for the longest, is it allows Medicare to enter the drug negotiations. Okay. So what happens there is, the assumption on the outside is, once, government gets its big, swagger to the negotiating table, the companies will, cower in fear and give them whatever price they want. But what happens is the government represents about 35 or 40 million people who are in Medicare, Medicaid. That's who they're, Part D, that's who they're buying drugs for, right? There's at least three pharmacy benefit managers who have more than 70,000. So they're not the big player in the game. They're one of the smaller players in the game. But they don't do anything for high end, right? What the government wants to do is to get big discounts on on generics, on drugs that have gone into generic use and so forth. Okay, so they have what they call a fail first policy. So your kidney is messed up. You must take the old generic drug that's cheaper, that they've negotiated the big knockdown price on, until you can demonstrate that that one doesn't work for you, then they will consider giving you a newer, making you eligible for a newer prescription, a newer drug, right, or that might fit your needs better. Okay, so I mean, why is government messing in this in the first place? Okay, so what happens is the government says, okay, we'll give you those, the 30-year-old drugs, we'll sell them to you cheap. Okay, but we're going to make it up on you on the stuff that people actually use now to get well, right? Because drugs have changed a lot, especially in the last few years. So we're gonna get our money somewhere. So now you have said on the products that are more likely to be used in 5 or 10 years, the price is going to go way up because the government is getting in here, insisting on things at the bottom of the market. So I mean, Part D started, it was part of the Medicare Modernization Act of 2006. So it started in early 2007. They actually got it up and running. When they were negotiating for it, Henry Waxman was chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform at that time, liberal Democrat from California, famous for the baseball hearings and the tobacco crusade on Capitol Hill. He said that the minimum premium, that the premium should be set by the government at $41 a month for Part D drug plans. Okay, because otherwise it'll go way higher. Okay, so in that 16 years, whatever it's been since then, it's still not $41. It's still lower. Okay, so I mean they don't understand the economics of what they're doing. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services says that Part D, is one of the most successful government programs ever because it's about a third under budget. And almost the entire reason that it's under budget is because the government has not been able to negotiate drug prices. So that's what the CMS says. No friend of conservatives, just a government agency looking at the data. Okay, so now their big accomplishment is, I don't know how it helps voters. Do you see anybody going to the polls over, wow, now we're able to negotiate drug prices? I do not. All they did was drive up the cost of those programs and make the drugs people actually use harder to get.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I mean, this act is not going to do anything for the economy, and it's not really going to do anything for the Democrats. I mean, this is not like it's going to it's not going to get them more votes. Right.
Because the other thing is, even their experts say it will be months and months or years and years before you start to see the effects of this. Okay. Well, the election is, like you say, it's down in the mid 80s now, 85, 86 days. Right. So if it's not helping by 85 or 86 days, why are you guys passing it? Right. Because you're going to be eating it.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that'll benefit me directly since my time with AIM is over, is that I have to pay for my own medical. And as a result of that, in poking around, found out that I can get some pretty heavily subsidized, healthcare, almost identical to what I've got now with AIM, for a lot less than AIM was paying directly, right? And it's all based on income. The lower my income drops, the less I pay. And they've extended that for 3 years. And I'm thinking I really hate to think that I'm actually going to be benefiting by this Obamacare exchange because everybody's paying for it, right? It's still coming out of everybody's pocket, and I would rather have a real free market, type of situation. But this is where we are with the world and all of this. But yeah, they're selling people a bill of goods that means nothing. That's really not going to do anything. Inflation Reduction Act, my arse, as they would say. And, it's just not going to be. I mean, and we saw today. I mean, yes, gas price. I love how the Biden administration, right? It's like, what do we have? 56, 57 days of falling gas prices in a row, as you alluded to earlier. This has nothing to do with anything the administration is doing or their policies. This is demand. The gas prices have risen to a point where people are saying, I'm not driving my car as much, and so demand, drops off. There's still another problem with all of this too, that says, there's going to be a point where, it will probably flatten out a little bit because we still have refinery maintenance shutdowns that are probably coming, because they're running at 93% capacity. They cannot flat out run those without having maintenance. They need those periods, and when that happens, you're going to have another crunch. With that. So we don't have enough refining capacity. We've got a lot of other issues, but boy, the Democrats, they keep wanting to harp on that. I mean,
They
I
keep
guess
closing them and they won't permit new ones. So,
right.
it's not going to get better the way they're going at it. I'll just say that.
Right. And then I guess inflation, the top line number was down a little bit, spurred on by lower gas prices, which has helped that.
Because food, housing, and what's the other big one that's in there? Food, housing, and something.
Like
They were all up, huh?
It would be something like rent or something like that.
Yeah, food. That's right. Food, housing, and rent was all up substantially. So, you haven't solved the problem, Joe. Keep working.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot
go to work.
You and I go to a grocery store, or I go to the Costco's, Sam's Club of the world. I mean, even in a warehouse club environment, we see the inflation. I mean, the stuff that 20% in a year for some things as mundane as chocolate chip cookies in a plastic container. It's like, what the heck is going on there? I mean, we looked at when we were down in Indiana, we were at a Walmart, and my wife said, just check the price of the jumbo eggs. She likes the jumbo eggs, the large eggs over there at Walmart. And at one point in time, not that long ago, she was able to get those suckers for like 86 cents a dozen, right? In Indiana, that one Walmart, that dozen eggs was $3.86. Her jaw just kind of continually drops when you see this. It's like, what has happened when your basic commodities, your milk, your bread, your eggs, things that people need or use, have shot up by 20, 30, 50% or whatever, depending upon your region. It's outrageous. And, and also on gas prices, it also depends upon where you live. Right. Because if you're in Utah, you're not seeing much of this effect of falling gas prices. They have high gas prices that have not moved much. And I don't know what it's been like in Virginia where you are, but I was gone for about a week. I saw very little change in gas prices here, around my neck of the woods during the time I was gone. Now, when I was in Indiana, completely different picture. As of this morning, when my wife called me for something, the price of gas, regular gas at Costco in Evansville, Indiana, was $3.49. When we arrived there on July 27th, it was like $3.85, right? So it has dropped precipitously in that time. I think she's mapping out the road trip back, and she's got the Shell station we stopped by in Mount Sterling, Kentucky. I think she checked Gas Buddy and was down to $3.40. Now it's still higher than it was a year ago. So here we are like, whoa, $3.60, $3.40, hallelujah. But
high five.
It's better than $4.50 and $5.
It is. That's true.
All right, Bob's got another comment here.
Right. And another thing he brings up a point here is like, so the definition, changing the words, right? Recession, raid. I didn't want to call that a raid yesterday. Like, it's a raid, buddy. What are you talking about? Recession, that was a big one, right? It's it's always been 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. We had that unarguably, and no, that's not anymore. It's this thing that the National Bureau of Economic Research decides, right? It's like, no, it's 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, right? And then like, what is a woman? It's like all these, like, you got to change the definition of the words, because the plain definition of the word, the popularly understood definition of the word, hurts you politically, right? It means you're lying.
Yeah. No, I mean, this administration has been good, on all this kind of double speak and not trying to change the direction. As he says, you cherry pick all these things to try to do this. And there is a limit to where even some liberals can deal with this, right? I mean, it's just as much as they hate a lot of conservative things and the Trump policies and stuff like this, the Biden administration has still made a lot of these guys shake their heads like, we have gone a little bit too far here. I can't sign on to this anymore.
Yeah.
And all of that. All right. We're wrapping up here. So the last word, what do you want to go?
Well, we lost a couple of people. I don't think I'll just deal with that. One is Olivia Newton-John, who guys our age, a lot of them are, that was your first crush,
Exactly. I'm glad you said that. Oh man, was I in love with her?
Yeah, me too. She was gorgeous.
Oh my gosh.
So, and a lot of people said that, and and it looks like she spent a lot of her life trying to help people. Good for her. Also, we lost Vin Scully, who spent a lot of his life trying to help people, as well as being the best sports announcer of our time in the U.S. in any sport. In his case, he's also a good conservative, donated to some conservative organizations. There's a take of him talking about socialism. So socialism failing as it always does, has produced nothing but misery and tragedy in Venezuela. He was talking about a Venezuelan player, I guess. More, yes, indeed. That's right. I always thought that. And
I love Bo Derek.
Fights like that, man. But he also said, who's the richest person in Venezuela? The president's daughter. It's like, hello. So, and he goes, it's 0-2. It goes right back to baseball. But a guy that like all of America, knew and beloved and much missed and so forth. What else is on here? Monkeypox. I think that's funny to just talk about that. The health people are supposed to be keeping us well and giving us well-meaning advice, refuse to say, hey, gay people, quit going to orgies for a little while. Tighten the cheeks for 2 weeks. Someone told me. And, or something, right? Yeah. You got to do something.
It's time to end the broadcast now.
Yeah. This is a thing where that's the intervention, right? Yeah. Is to say, this is resulting from gay sex. Tell us the truth. Okay. It's not, that's up to people what they do. Adults, it's legal, whatever. So, but it's, let's recognize that that's the problem. And those are the guys we need to talk to about solving it. We refuse to do that. Not against them, but just, hey, this affects you, stop the spread.
Right. No, and that's the thing. I mean, we get all these news stories, at least the ones I see about the spread of monkeypox, but by and large, the gay sex part of it is left out. So people, the general public is led to believe that this is like the next big public health crisis, but right. This is very, defined in terms of to a certain segment of the population. That's really what's happening here. It is not the broad population. So yeah, right. If you stop doing the behavior, the problem will fade away. But
just be careful for a while.
Yeah, be careful. I mean, right. Exactly. Olivia Newton-John, what amazing. I mean, 30-year battle with cancer, breast cancer, and all this, and she was doing this. There was a story about Jane Seymour and her and Olivia's Newton-John's kind of last day. She was in a lot of pain, but she fought through it. Great, gorgeous, great songs, really entertaining. Loved her to death. One of my favorite all-time singers of my generation, of my youth. So, I will definitely miss her. Vin Scully, as you said, I mean, what do you say about a guy who had a 67-year career in broadcasting?
Yeah, with one team.
One team, an amazing guy, and was beloved by just about everybody. So, yeah, he will be missed, but the tributes flowed in, and he deserves every accolade, every tribute he gets for that, because it was a magnificent career and a magnificent life that he gave to the sports world. So
yeah, one of the funniest, before we go, stories he ever told was one night they brought in the relief pitcher Fernando Rodney. I don't know if you remember.
I remember Fernando Rodney. Yeah,
he's a little bit eccentric, right? So Vin Scully started telling that he would go and get haircuts, right? And he would put the cut hair, the hair that got cut off, into a bag and mail it to his mom. I mean, that's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. But it's like, how did Vin Scully get that story? How did he find that out, right? He found out stuff that no one else, like I would watch the Astros play the Dodgers, right? And I would find out stuff about the Astros that the Astros announcers never knew and never told me, right? But he did know. He did find out.
Yeah. So yeah, there'll never be another Vin Scully. We've got some great broadcasters out there, but no one compares to Vin Scully.
Exactly.
All right, folks. before my voice totally goes away for whatever reason, or that this cough. Maybe I'm catching COVID. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't joke about that. Anyway, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week. Enjoy the rest of your week, and try to stay cool if you're in hot and humid areas of the country like Brian and I are. All right. See you later.